You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.
Welcome to Radiant Creators. Thank you so much, Sacha Stone, for being on the show. And when it comes to introducing Sacha Stone, there are some people that they've done too much, they're doing too much, there's no way to really introduce them. So I'd say look in the show notes for more info on Sacha, but definitely there's the Humanitid Foundation, New Earth Project, and International Tribunal for Natural Justice, and also Sacha is well known for 5G Apocalypse, the extinction event. So I'm not sure of a way to truly introduce you. You've just done a lot, and you're doing a lot. So my intent on having you on was it feels like right now we are in the midst of the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, it's always happening. That's the struggle of life. But right now, doesn't it feel very apparent that it's on the surface, that we're kind of, as individuals, we're living it right now? And
yeah, it is. It is end of days. The Hindu epics, the Mahabharatas, you rightly express. It's end of days stuff. It's apocalyptic. It's Armageddon-esque. It's revelation. It's tribulation. It's bifurcation. It's all of that stuff. And how blessed are we to be inhabiting human bodies at this time?
Yes, if you're alive today, you asked for it. So, so you wanted to be here for this. And that's the thing. I'm feeling excited about the times that we're having right now. And of course, we all know there's the corona stuff going on. And you wrote something on Facebook just recently, and you called it tearing off the corona mask. And one line that really got me that I see in there is invasive frequency radiations unleashed upon people and planet by the parent corporation. And something that I've noticed, and people that I've been talking to have noticed, is that it really feels like right now there is basically fear is being broadcast. It seems like it's been ratcheted up. We all know there's a coronavirus thing happening. And then you've got, I call it the empire. One can call it the deep state, secret societies. I just give it a blanket statement as the empire. And the empire is doing what it always does in times like this, clamping down, totalitarianism. It's doing that. But with all this happening, it feels like there's literally, and it's a multidimensional thing, it's happening on many different levels. It seems like fear is being broadcast to us.
Well, I would refer to it as an empire, except there have been benevolent empires. But when I call it the parent corporation, there's never been a benevolent corporation. A corporation is a dead thing. It's in the word corporation. It's a fiction. And the fact of the matter is that our lives have become centrally governed by the parent corporation, which owns and controls the collateral, which are the living souls, and the land assets. What have you got if you haven't got humans and land? Basically, the parent corporation has managed to steal its way into our reality matrix and indenture and own all the land and all the living souls. So the parent corporation is the creature that has harvested us through registrations and through tabulations. It's really since 1066 and the Doomsday complex kicked in fully. That, of course, happened on the back of the weaponization of Christianity with the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. And we could talk about the weaponization of all monotheistic religions as part of that hybrid social construct which eroded human dignity and dislocated humans from the soil, the living men and women from the living soil. That really was the great surrender of our sovereignty, the great abrogation was dislocating us from the land. And then, of course, getting us, tricking us, allowing ourselves, should I say, into being tricked into seeking gold in the citadel, in the city, in the towns, and leaving the agrarian cultures and moving into these centralized city grids, which are highly toxic. It's all part of a feedback complex, but I call it the parent corporation. You rightly refer to it as an empire. Either which way, its day is done. Certainly, we're in the death rattle of that systemic corruption of empire. There is no question in my mind that what we're witnessing today is that. But the distinction is tearing off the mask. Do we have the courage to tear the mask off? And of course, it's not just metaphoric. I'm also talking about people walking around looking like chimpanzees, wearing these absurd coronavirus masks. They're all part of the totemism of our self-elected exile from our supernature, and how we're choosing to mask ourselves, to disguise and masquerade ourselves from our divine nature, from our supernature, from our Christed light, so to speak. And that is a choice. Each of one of us are making it at the individual level, and at the social and civilizational level, apparently, we're choosing to reflex into that absurd pantomime at the collective level. We ought to be deeply ashamed and embarrassed at the fact. And every time I see someone on the street wearing the mask, I'm if I have a chance to say to them, "What are you doing?" You hear the mundane arguments about I'm protecting others, bullshit to all of that. Your human autoimmune system is connected to the endocrine, to the pineal function, to the conduit that you have to source consciousness. We are spirit enwrapped in matter, for God's sake. We have access to the Akashic, access to the universal library. We are multidimensional, limitless beings, but we choose to forget that. And now we make the terrible mistake of allowing a fiction called government to tell us what to be, what to do, and how to think.
I like the way you put it as conduit. And it seems at this time where I would say the fear is being cranked up, there's a lot going on. I call it psychic weather. You can just feel a lot of energy going on right now with all these events that are going on at the moment. And you mentioned conduit, and I like the way you put that conduit of energy, our source, our consciousness. And it seems that at this time, people are going in two directions, I'm noticing. There's those who've been cultivating that conduit of self, of soul, of spirit, that connection. And at this time, when I feel like the pressure's been ratcheted up a little bit, people are going in and they're getting closer and connected to their source. Or if individuals have not been cultivating that, all they have right now is fear. How does that resonate?
That's entirely correct. I refer to it in simplistic terms as frequency X and above, or frequency X and below. And you could argue that frequency X is the heart center, and where we find our supernature or our Christ consciousness, or our, however you want to frame it, when we step into self, capital S. That is the point at which we start to access higher frequency, higher vibration, and the accesses that we thereby have to supernature or to the universal mind, to our genius, and our capacity to embody and manifest higher outcome. That's the stuff that's the benefit of stepping into your skin and owning who we are, forgiving ourselves of past transgressions and moving forward. Conversely, if we choose to remain stricken into frequency X and below, lower vibral patterns and of fear and lower frequencies of consciousness, then indeed we are walk-in fodder. We are opening ourselves up for lower astral intervention, demonic possession, addictions of any manner, all order of magnitude, and surrendering and abnegating the higher aspects of who we are. So it comes down essentially to that choice between fear and love. And what you're seeing, of course, at the planetary level now is a collective constriction into a recoil into that default pattern of fear. But it also speaks to the mystery that is connected to our galactic genome and the old stories and storylines that are revisiting us at this time. So you could see it as being a collective unconscious awakening, that this kind of New World Order, soft New World Order that we're witnessing right now, where we're being invited to self-isolate. We're being invited to step to the left or step to the right. It's not exactly a barrel of a gun that's telling us to do it, which is what happened in the Second World War, in the First World War, and in many other wars. But so in a sense, it's soft, it's light version of Armageddon. It's a bloodless Armageddon. And to that extent, we're very blessed, and the grace of God is clearly amongst us as we awaken from this galactic sleep. But it is choice. We choose fear or we choose love. One is in a state of constriction, and one is in a state of expansion. And those of us who are smart or meek are the ones who are choosing to be affirmative, creative, and expansive. Move out there, embrace the sun, tear off these ridiculous masks, and hug people, engage relationship, activate the prana, the life force of all living beings through joy, through bliss, through delight, through creativity. That is the stuff that takes us into a higher incarnatory cycle. That is the stuff that raises the vibration at the collective level of the gestalt or the morphogenetic level. And that's the point at which we depart from an apocalyptic world beset with viruses and invisible threats. God knows the virus is probably the most innocuous of the visible threats that we face.
And that's something people are picking up on, that I have not come across anybody who is as concerned about the current coronavirus thing as they are what you, as you put it, New World Order light, or I would call Empire light. I like that. People are concerned about the totalitarianism that they see being pushed right now, because that's what the Empire does. That's what New World Order limp or light does. While they still have some power, it's just it's their default mode. Oh, here's an opportunity. Whether it was engineered or by chance, their reaction is the same. And that seems to be what people are concerned about. And you mentioned the masks. It is funny to see people wearing the masks. And I keep thinking when I see it of Star Wars. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid watching Star Wars and all the storm, what do they call them? Whatever the little white troops were, the stormtroopers, They had this mask on, and even as a kid, I picked up on that. I went, "That's like, there's no individuality there. There's like your corporate, slave. There's that person who lives a life that they don't want to live." And it feels like, could it be that mask is literally a sigil? It's like a spell done by dark magic. Here, wear this. We're going to give you an identity. There feels like a big bunch of black magic to me.
I think it's a very, very keen observation of yours, Craig, and I couldn't agree more. It is totemism, it's iconoclasticism or iconography being written into the field. But again, who is they? They are the unresolved aspects of you and I. And if I truly want to change the field of expression, I need to acknowledge and accede the fact that everything, apocalyptic or otherwise, that manifests on my radar screen is there by my permission. And moreover, I am the progenitor of all of the images that I'm projecting or permissioning into the field. That is Sovereignty 101, and to own that is to access our divine nature. And when we're in that flame of truth and right action within our divine nature, we then recognize one thing, which is that we're able to manifest any outcome. So we could continue to play ping pong as a civilization and go from freedom to tyranny and left to right, black to white, light to dark, white magic to black magic, Dungeons and Dragons to Ezekiel's chariot. We can choose all of these icons, and they are all just images contained within a very polarized dialectic, which is what this binarized temporal universe offers us. It's the playground within which we discover the higher aspects of self. It's the playground within which we refine, clarify the lens of who we are, who we be. So let's start to enjoy the process. Let's start to reclaim full sovereignty, the alpha omega state of being and of witness, and then anchor patterns of perfection into this world and manifest heaven on earth. That is the calling. We mentioned a moment ago that the default is fear. Actually, the true default is perfection and bliss. But along the way, there are a few other intermediate defaults, fear being one of them.
It definitely is. And one of the reasons that it's so great to talk to you right now is that since there is a good deal, maybe a little bit extra fear out there, people are wearing masks, hiding from that fear, and it's very true. As you wrote, tearing off the corona mask, that's a mask that, yes, we tear that mask off, but yeah, we have to also, that is a moment where you're looking into yourself too, like why, you have to kind of look in the mirror and tear that mask off and then say, oh, look, that's me. What are my fears? Why did I ever put this thing on in the first place?
Yes.
For sure.
I loved your analogy to the stormtroopers in Star Wars, and it's a very, very correct analogy. And it's a choice. I'm allowing the state to mind fuck me or dream spell me into looking as absurd as I ever could look, and letting the state tell me that I can hug my grandchildren or not, or sleep in the same bed as my beloved because my beloved has a temperature. This is theatrics. This is pantomime. And again, all we're playing out are the last vestiges of an Atlantean mythos that we haven't quite purged from our system yet. It is a detox at that subliminal level of species from our, the origin of species, the genesis of who and what we are is connected to trauma. The bifurcation of the light and the dark, the emerging from the void, all the way up to the spermatoza penetrating the membrane of the egg. All of these things are acts of crass violence, in a sense, that spark life in the 3D temporal world. God Almighty, let's just step into this flame of creativity and joy and choose to have a different experience. I'm quite serious when I say that I am feeling quite blissed out by what's happening. To people like me who I've never adhered to the apocalyptic narrative. I've witnessed it, I've written about it, I've made films about it, I've warned about it, but I've never anchored my own expression into that place, my life force. I've never anchored my life force into it. I've never identified or allowed the identification process with the apocalyptic narrative, even although I've been one of the pundits on the front line for many years. The fact is I've invested more time, effort, resource, motion, and energy into conjuring. The New Earth Project is testament to that. Conjuring up the images that of the elevation of art and beauty and consciousness, of creative expansion, building spaces and defining noble ideas. The International Tribunal for Natural Justice being one of the things that myself and colleagues have conjured out of nothing, seeking to restore natural justice. These are things worthy of our attention, of our life force, not of focusing on the tyranny of government or the tyranny of ages, and imagining that dream spell can cast any longer a shadow than it already has. It's over. That Atlantean Babylonian mythos is over. This is a detox. All that the virus is a detox. If you want to look at what a virus is, it's an excretion from the cell, from all living systems, and ecosystems are in the process right now of excreting the poisons of the radio frequencies or the radiation frequencies that are bombarding us. And that is most likely connected to the onset of 5G. But it's also a threshold event of a buildup, a systemic buildup of mutant electro frequencies over the last few years, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and just the prevalence of all of these evil frequencies. I've said on a couple of other interviews today and yesterday that the Second World War, at the onset of radar, we had a similar phenomenon. Millions and millions of people around the world got this aberrant influenza and dropped dead in 1918, I think it was, with the Spanish flu, which killed hundreds of millions of people around the world. That also corresponded and coincided with the emergence the year before of radio frequencies, telegraphy. So every time we allow white man's poison and the Atlantean fire technology that we are abusing, when we allow those mutant frequencies into the atmosphere, the living systems of the world respond, and because they're under attack, and they have to somehow absolve or transmute that toxification through our bodies, through our living cells, and then excrete them and give them back. And that's what viruses are. That's what a pandemic is. I refer people to Rudolf Steiner on that. But I also want to quickly touch on another matter, which I think is incredibly important when we're considering the pandemic, the virus. And that is that, and this I refer here to the work of the magnificent Dr. Klinghardt. He reminds us that we've had, subsequent to the Second World War, the infusion of fluoride in all municipal water supplies around the world. And fluoride is probably the biggest killer on Earth today. But it's been pumped into all of the water supplies of the world and has slowly infused our bodies with fluoride. And our pineal glands have become calcified, pretty much every single one of us, in the last 75, 80 odd years, or certainly since the United Nations stepped up and implemented fluoridation of water as the protocol. And of course, we were sold a crock of shit by governments and by the medical science fraternity, who were in an evil conspiracy and collusion connected to the Pirbright Institute and the other organizations which we could speak about, which fluoridated not just the water, but products, household products, the obvious one being toothpaste. So we have every dentist in the world drilling billions of teeth and telling us to brush our teeth with fluoride over the last 75 years. We now know that fluoride robs us of calcium. It doesn't help teeth in any way, shape, or form, or bones. It simply imprints disease and mutancy into our bodies. And yet our governments have done that, and all of our health professionals have done it, and our dentists have done it for generation after generation after generation, simply because some insane sociopath at the onset of this decided to implement that policy, that regime. We've subsequent to fluoridation of water, had glyphosates pumped into the world's food supply. So we have glyphosates prevailing everywhere, in every single product you can imagine. Every single one of us have glyphosate now, and fluoride infiltrating our bodies. Then we've had decades of geoengineering and the dissemination of these aluminum dust particles, nanoparticles, which have been raining down upon us all around the world. And it is now known that aluminum and fluoride, forgive me, aluminum and what was the other poison I just mentioned? Forgive me.
Glyphosates.
Thank you. The glyphosate and the aluminum, according to Klinghardt, connect and trigger or catalyze some 6 different chemical reactions in the body. The end game being that they move to the pineal gland and interlock with the fluoridized calcified pineal. Now, you've got an unholy trinity there of chemistry going on in every single human and sentient body now in the world, pretty much. Then you bring in 5G with that particular weaponized frequency, and that apparently, according to Klinghardt, is the catalyst. That is the thing that triggers the bomb in the pineal and implodes effectively the pineal. Now, when that happens, we have a complete disconnect to source, effectively. It's the ultimate bomb. It's the ultimate override of human sentience, so that lower astral intelligences, egregore, elemental cloud intelligences, demons, distant galaxies, however you want to iterate this, have now carte blanche to walk in to the human and essentially commandeer the human soul. That is endgame. That's mark of the beast stuff. It's actually more terrifying than anything that was written about in Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're living it. It's happening right here, right now. But there is a difference. The difference is the grace of God. The fact that we are being bombarded galactically by this photon band, which I see absolutely as being the astrophysical manifest representation of the grace of God. And that vibral light, that photon band that's been bombarding us incrementally for some time now, has reached a threshold maximum. And that maximum is infusing the living cells of all beings in this world. In fact, of every single thing on the surface and within the earth is being bombarded by these photons. And that is raising the vibration to be able to access the source consciousness sufficiently to be able to throw this devil off our back. But be clear, it was temporal agents through governments, through popes and principalities of ages that have allowed the engineering of the autodestructive Homo sapien. And that fiction of government and the institutions needs to be brought to bear and brought to task.
Amazing. And you mentioned Rudolf Steiner, and there's something about of course, the cosmic rays are coming in. We are entering the photon belt, and that's increasing. It's getting more and more intense. And people that I know that are in touch with their conduit, I'll call it, great analogy for it, their conduit. People who are in touch, they feel it. I mean, it's almost like it's a daily thing you feel today, and you look around and you see it. And so we look at the world right now where you've got crazy virus thing, you've got the totalitarian squeeze, the death throes of New World Order light. And something that I find comfort in, inspiration in, is that ultimately this is spiritual. That's what it really is at its core. That's this kind of intensity of the Bhagavad Gita that we're seeing right now, this battle. It's spiritual first. And with all the cosmic energy coming in, you just look around and I go, man, this is exciting. I'm glad we finally got started.
Agreed. Absolutely right. I'm waking up every morning recently, in recent weeks, for the first time in well over 17, 18 years. I can recall having woken up wherever I was in the world with a psychic dread knot in my gut. It's something which actually compelled me into the work that I've been doing. Waking up with that dread knot in the gut was something which really helped to push me to rise to the occasion and get me out of the door and get me on the front foot, because I have been really seeking to qualify that what I pick up as being a collective psyche barometer. And I have to say that in the last few short weeks, I have noticed that is completely gone, especially in the last 2 weeks, I'd say. For the first time in my life, I'm waking up in the morning, and the very first thing I'm doing is sensing in that space between the woken state and the sleeping state, I am checking that psychic dread barometer, and it is gone. It is absolutely gone. I'm feeling so deeply peaceable and qualified for the first time really in almost 2 decades. I can't express how amazing that feels to someone like me, who's been out there banging the drum for an awful long time and well aware, I'm painfully aware of all of the apocalyptic scenarios. I mean, I've been doing simulation games in my head for over 15 years of end of days. I've been writing about this stuff and making films about this stuff and conducting hundreds of interviews over the years about precisely this stuff. And all I can say is that I am absolutely blown away by how peaceable this soft landing appears to be being engineered, both by temporal forces, what I would refer to as the Earth Alliance. I've made it quite clear that I believe that there is a systematic takedown underway of the dark hats, however you want to phrase it, of the cabal, the Sabbatean, Lurian, Luciferian sons of bitches who have been colluding for an awful long time in all of this evil empire enterprise. And I believe that is underway courtesy of certain temporal agents, and I would absolutely cite Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump as being the two principal figures there. And I'm happy to say that despite the hail of bullets I come under from liberal intellectuals on both sides of the east and west coast of the United States. But I firmly believe that to be true, and I think I have a sufficiently universal take on what's going on to be able to very objectively be able to make that analysis.
No, I hear you. And with Trump, a kind of a modern day philosopher, Neil Kramer, he put it, Trump is a test of consciousness, and you either get it or you don't. You know, and if you get it, you go, oh yeah, that's the thing. We're in a very strange state where people, their emotions and their opinions seem to have become fact. And you look at Trump, and many people, I mean, we see it here in the States, you know, as we call it, Trump derangement syndrome. And my take on it is, whether you like him or not, if you look at it factually, what's going on, what are you so pissed about? Maybe you don't like him as a person. He's bombastic, whatever. But factually, what exactly are you losing your mind about? And people really, you can see the programming that's been going on. And it's on so many levels. Like, it reminded me of the toilet paper thing. So here, you know, we have, you know, all the toilet paper is gone. And I think to myself, man, that was a test that was engineered. Let's program them to buy toilet paper, and then they could measure and go, that worked. And so when I see the Trump derangement syndrome, people just losing their minds and throwing over tables, I'm like experiment, success, right there. Same thing. Yeah.
Agreed. I mean, look, anyone who takes a running kick at the mainstream media, as Trump has done, anyone who takes a running kick at the sheer criminality of NAFTA and those international trade pipelines, anyone who takes a running kick at the Federal Reserve and the central banking system, anyone who takes a running kick at human trafficking and pedophilia, as only Donald Trump has done with the executive pen, and not only gets my vote, not that I do vote, but gets my adulation. And I don't care if it's Donald Trump the man, or if it's Donald Trump the sock puppet being wielded by a bunch of white hats in the Pentagon basement. I couldn't give a monkey's if it's one or the other. The fact of the matter is, this executive pen, which is being wielded at the front end of this particular corporation, appears to be on the redemption path and the absolution path, and that to me means everything.
Yes, and also, individuals like Trump have existed before, so a little bit of history sometimes puts it in context, you know. The Secret Destiny of America, that book, I forget the author, quite famous, but he talks about many times where America was saved and kind of got some divine guidance along the way. I forget the author, but it's Secret Destiny of America. And then you also look at this country, the McCarthy years. He kind of historically got demonized, but ultimately there was a lot of corruption. What he was chasing actually did exist. And now we're finding out, it's funny where history sometimes it obscures what happened, and sometimes history makes it more clear. So as we get further away, some things get blurry, some things get more clear. And now there's a bit of a renaissance of, oh, McCarthy, what was he actually studying? What was he going after? And we realize, wow, he was being fed lots of info. Hey, these guys. There were these kind of, you know, unseen, invisible hands that were giving him all this data. What do people think he came up with that? No, he was being given that information to go after. So, yeah, in a sense, Trump, whether it's him as an individual or whether him just being given this data here, same thing. It's happened before in history many times. Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, I do look at what you're saying about how you woke up with a knot, where you woke up with a, ugh. I understand the feeling very well. And this is a big deal because, yeah, so we have a bit of the world being a little crazier than usual right now, and I feel excited and I feel good, and that's one of the things that's been almost confusing me, but that's where I realize this is a spiritual battle, and we have to be, good has to be getting the better side of this. Love has to be getting the better side of this. You know, human evolution of the spirit has to be getting the better side of this, because I've been realizing recently, so it's gotten quiet. You know, the world has kind of gotten quieter. And I sleep better. I wake up, I feel better, and I'm realizing like, holy crap, like it's like it just snowed, and it's peaceful and it's quiet outside during this whole quarantine of and I go,
Well, look
yeah,
look at the geometry. Look at the geometry of what I said earlier about how we were the dislocation of the relationship of the living men and women of the living soil from the land was engineered. And that's where priests and kingly lines came in and began taxations and the usurpation of the true sovereign, which is the living man and women of the soil. So that relationship was breached, engineered, and we were sort of hustled into enslavement, mind, body, and soul, subsequent to that breach. Okay, we permissioned it, but it happened nonetheless. And now we're seeing people being returned to their, or even restored to their relationship with themselves and with their families in this self-imposed isolationist nonsense that's playing out. But the irony within the irony is that this isolationism is a reconvention, a reconvening of relationship with self, with family, with silence, and obviously with nature, because the one beneficiary of all of this inhalation that's going on, or this withdrawal of industry and of commerce and exchange and travel and pandemonium, the one major beneficiary, of course, is nature, and all of nature's codes are being restored in this time of self-imposed isolationism. So there's a beautiful irony within an irony, that our collective gestalt manifests a kind of apocalyptic new world order, lockdown scenario, end of days scenario, and yet within the geometry of that, actually the relaxing back into the default of nature's codes is occurring at the same time. Wow, that's beautiful.
it absolutely is. And when we see this as a big spiritual battle, a big spiritual thing happening, a spiritual reality happening, and the cosmic rays coming in, more energy, charging our DNA, enlivening us, and that conduit's getting stronger for many. It's funny that you mentioned Rudolf Steiner, because I'm seeing a renaissance of Rudolf Steiner recently. I mean, I know people have known about him for quite a while, ever since he existed on Earth for a while, but he's starting to be a household name. I mean, people are going, yeah, there's this, that's Ahrimanic, that's Luciferic, there's this, there. People are starting to talk in terms of the eighth sphere, yeah. I mean, and I'm blown away. Wait a second, this is really, I mean, Steiner's pretty deep, and he's becoming common now, and that's amazing. Of course, you have biodynamic farming, you have the Waldorf schools, so it's taken a while. And when you look at the deep esoteric writings and knowledge of Steiner, and you think, man, that's becoming commonplace. This world has changed, and now we're seeing, like you mentioned, people getting back to nature. We're kind of seeing this neo-aboriginal emerge, this new aboriginal.
I love that. And you mentioned Rudolf Steiner, or I mentioned Rudolf Steiner, but there are three figures that I think we need to really pay attention to now, historical figures that have been marginalized, that are about to come back and storm the house. One is Nicholas Tesla, one is Rudolf Steiner, and the other is Walter Russell. And those three icons, historical icons, I think are about to storm the house, because we're going to realize civilizationally that they actually wrote the almost perfect templates in terms of the social graces and sciences and arts. And if we remember, these figures have been with us forever. We've had avatars since the beginning of time. Of course, they get marginalized in their own lifetime, and a prophet is never a prophet in his own home, and all of that stuff. But yes, how wonderful that their flame nonetheless has remained absolutely alive through this dark chapter.
Yes. And even the Gurtenaeum, I think, that Steiner created when it was burned down at one time, but this kind of heater in the back, this chimney that is said to have very, very mystical energy and power, it didn't get burned down. It's still there. So it's funny. Yeah, you can't destroy these moments of truth,
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there is a renaissance emerging right now, this whole quarantine thing, I think it's backfiring on, I'll call it New World Order Light, Empire Light. I think it's backfiring because the cosmic energy is coming in, and this evolution, this speed up that's happening, this is bigger than Empire. So where it's used to having control, now I think it's kind of messed up. It went, oh, we have this opportunity. Let's put masks on everybody, quarantine them, do black magic, do our thing. But people are becoming more human. I realize that humanity will continue, of course, but it's going to continue more human, because I notice things happening all over the place. People are, since we have to social distance and wait in line to go and get, stuff, people are on their phones less, and they're talking to each other. We're taking care of our elders. Stores open a little earlier just for them. We actually now have, here in Phoenix, we have a puzzle hut because people are at home. So it's this like puzzle library. People can drop off their puzzles and get new ones. And there's this beautiful renaissance of community. People are taking care of each other. And it's just the opposite, I think, of what they planned to happen.
And that's exactly right. And that's how Babylonian magic does unto itself in the end. It's all play acting. It goes back to the real hyperdimensional physics of what is taking place. We are having an experience in this temporal 3D world from a singularity point of consciousness, each one of us, as sons and daughters of God, self-elected to migrate and soul migrate into the space-time continuum. And here we are, individually and collectively projecting images into the field, unresolved aspects of our supernature, which we want to come back and meet with us in this life, in this experience, so that we can raise our sights and step up to the plate, become our divine supernature. And that's all that's going on right now. This is just a final, blazing, this is the blazing end chapter to that long galactic sleep cycle. We've already, in a sense, moved into the galactic day that happened with the 2012-2013 crossover. So we're already quite, along that passage already. The photon band we entered into a very long time ago, actually, but we're incrementally reaching the threshold event. We've actually reached that threshold event. I would argue that was in 1987 with the harmonic convergence. But here we are. We've already reached dry land. We have already entered into the resurrection. It's underway. Nothing can thwart that. No manner of apocalyptic images can shock us or traumatize us back into that space, other than in the imagination. And all the fear that's taking place today is absolutely in the imagination. That's where it stems from. That's where it exists. You can choose to go through hell on earth right now and believe what you want to believe, or you can choose the other. I suggest you walk out your front door, tell the fiction government to stand the fuck down. Excuse my language, but I'm so angered by the fact that we continue to allow these fictions, these morons, these brain-dead, soulless entities, technocrats and bureaucrats posturing in goddamn uniforms and costumes. And we allow this theater to override our divine sentient spark. What madness! Madness. Enough.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, so we have this gift right now where, as you mentioned, you're not feeling that psychic, that dread when you wake up. And I know that there are other people feeling the same way. They go, wow, the world's crazier, but I feel at peace. Suddenly, I'm at peace in the midst of hell. It's gotten crazier and I feel better. And there's an excitement. And I think definitely it's the cosmic energy coming in that's helping us. It's a spiritual war. It's time to, kick the old empire to the curb. It's existed far too long. Time to be done with that. So we have this gift. Now we can go, I have some peace here. And I didn't have it before, and I'm realizing, wow, I carry these traumas and these fears. I can drop those. I didn't realize I was carrying them, but now I see them more so. Well, with that said, one of the things I think is very important is, as you mentioned, we can create whatever we want to create. And one of the things I really wanted to get across to people in talking to you today was there's fear out there, but we got to be positive. We got to live this new excitement that many of us are feeling. How do you create? As you mentioned, you can create anything that you want because we have our intent. Oftentimes, usually, always, you might say it's divinely inspired when you have that pure intent. How do you create the world that you want in the midst of all the craziness? How do you keep pushing that out? What's your manifesting technique? Mm-hmm.
It's no different to what I was saying a decade ago. Stop paying taxes. If you continue to pay taxes, which fuel the furnace of the creature that devours you, the fiction of government and the rules and regulations and statutes and ordinances that undignify us and destroy our sovereign expression, then we are the ones who are feeding the creature that is devouring us. That is the true Ouroboros myth being played out. We're self-electing this. And so if I truly want to engage the question of how do I manifest a higher outcome, I need to, at the ground floor, I need to acknowledge that rendering unto Caesar is maintaining the Roman Catholic nightmare, the Vatican complex nightmare, the Crown of England nightmare, the United Nations, Bank of International Settlement, IMF, World Bank nightmare, the World Health Organization, UNESCO, and World Trade Organization nightmares. This consolidation of power that erodes all that is sacred and vital about the human expression. I am the one allowing all of that monstrosity to prevail so long as I render coin unto Caesar. So stop paying taxes. I do not care that some illicit little gray men in the corridors of power have outlawed what I've just said and make it a crime for someone like me to say stop paying taxes. I couldn't give a damn about these goddamn troglodytes, these goddamn mandarins. Let them come at me with whatever they may. We'll deal with that at the time, and I've got a very good idea of how to deal with that stuff because I do deal with that stuff, and I have dealt with that stuff. The fact of the matter is that if and when you choose to step into sovereignty, which is to align yourself with that Christed light, with your divine power, you will cast the outcome. You are the determiner and arbiter of the outcome, not some little mandarin in the IRS. The IRS is a criminal organization, okay? The U.S. government, corporation government, is a criminal mafia enterprise. All right, the United Nations is the biggest consolidated crime cartel in the history of the world. Every single one of the 200 corporation governments on earth are crime cartels. They are underpinned by the central banks, which are all owned by the BIS, which feeds back to the U.S. Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, the Crown of England, and thereafter to the Vatican. And behind the Vatican, you've got the black papacy, and that is very, very real. Trust me, as real as it gets. So, and then behind the black papacy, the P2 Opus Dei motherfuckers shuffling around with their little red booties, behind that, you've got an even more egregious intelligence operating. And that takes us into our cosmogenesis, into the unresolved aspects of our cosmogenetic story, because there are certain elements which we are also being required now to absolve through the actualized human DNA expression. We have a duty of care, a responsibility as an actualized spirit in form to be able to absolve the lineage, the ancient storylines, which are still seeking absolution and a return to light. And of course, I'm referring here to aspects of the Draco reptilian, Zeta reticulum, and different so-called non-terrestrial or extraterrestrial intelligences. They're very much a part of who and what we are, in as much the same way that the Celestine aspects of our DNA are very much a part of who and what we are. We need, I think, to restore ourselves to a true knowledge that the human being is a perfect confluence, the perfect entanglement of the diabolical and the angelic. And that is the point of us being born in a bloody soup through the mother, and coming into this world invariably to impact against some kind of pain and sorrow and separatism. The trial of separation begins with that umbilical cord being cut. So that's our trauma, but that's what we chose to be a part of this exquisitely epic and noble undertaking of being a human being cast adrift in the void, where we become the arbiters of being able to absolve all lower forms of expression toward the light once we're actualized, once we've activated our DNA, so to speak. And that's a very reductive language to talk in terms of activating DNA, because we're not DNA. That's just a totem, another icon that describes our hyperdimensionality. Let's just recognize that we are, in a sense, supreme, that the alpha and the omega meet within the human once we become actualized, and we become absolutely unified with the Godhead, with the with Source, the principle, or we become the atom seed of Source consciousness in that sense. And this, to people who are addicted to monotheistic religions, becomes a sacrilege, of course, and it's actually outlawed by these religious idiots. When you step into that space and you recognize your divinity and you align fully to the divine flame, it is what it is. Alpha and Omega meet in that quanta, and you recognize the mystery that you be, that you are. And that's a profoundly wonderful thing. And each one of us actually are divinely elected to remember who we are in this world at this time. I would suggest that there's never been a more perfect time for the collective to stand in a circle and face that reality.
This time is a gift. It is the perfect time. I mean, we're feeling that dread pass, and if one has been working on that conduit of consciousness, their essential essence, focusing there, this is a rocket ship to Pluto when it comes to growth, to what we're here to do. You know, it's a wonderful time, and it's been so great talking to you. I want to ask you one more thing. And that is, here's something I'm noticing. This is an observation, and tell me what you think. So it's kind of a question, observation. Something I'm seeing very clearly now is we've got the world media going crazy. We have all this untruth. We have all this craziness going on. But what I'm seeing is when you are that clear beam, I think of it as an old slide projector, you know, with like the rotary thing. And so when you only have the light on, then boom, you shine this clear vision. You see what is there. It's clear. You illuminate it. And then ultimately, I look at it like, well, then God sees you back. You see the universe, it sees you back. There's this truth in your vision. You can see clearly what is. But it seems like right now I'm seeing this in people, just because the energy is turned up, cosmic rays coming in, I'm seeing where most people, they have a slide stuck in there and they're projecting a reality, and all they ever see is their reality that they're projecting and not much beyond it. So, I mean, do you notice that out there? Does that analogy work at all?
You've just described adherence, civilizational adherence to false light. And so, yes, when we're in the egoic mind, in that sense, we are devotees of Luciferian light, of false light worship, in much the same way that a fiat economy is a false light economy. It's not a correct economy at all. There's no real exchange. It's backed up by lies, deceptions, and sequestering of gold, and all the rest of it. We're living in a complex, or have been living in a complex for many thousands of years, which is entirely predicated on false light, idolatry, Luciferianism. But that's all come to a close now. I'm seeing the other occurring. I'm seeing more souls than not in my circle of influence, which is very wide, very broad, very considerable. I am seeing a tremendous exponential awakening. I have to say it's a little tedious sometimes for those of us who are banging certain drums for many years to have friends and family who we were saying this shit to 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago now, coming back and I'm getting friends and family posting memes to me that I was posting to them a decade ago. And it's cute, but yeah, I'm seeing that resurrection is taking place planetarily. I have no doubt in my mind of that.
And that's definitely a great place to wrap things up. I don't want to keep it too long. I appreciate your time. And yes, the awakening is happening. Sacha Stone sees it. I see it. And I think you're seeing it very clearly. You have a large circle, and so you're seeing that awakening happening. But for many people, they don't have, they're in maybe a smaller circle. They're not seeing it quite as clearly. Have faith. It is happening. The awakening is happening. So Sacha Stone, thank you so much for being on today. And what do you got going on right now? Or where can people get a hold of you? Of course, we'll link it all in the show notes. But is there anything you're working on right now you want to let people know about?
Not particularly. Right now, I'm working on being as clear a witness as I can be of what is unfolding, and to imbue what I'm observing or what I'm witnessing with as much disidentification as possible. I simply want to bear full witness to what is happening, and I'm loving the process thus far. But no, I'm not selling any snake oil today. Thank you, Craig. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.